Welcome aboard Imagination Skyway, your grand podcast tour of the magic. I'm your host, Matthew Kroll, and today's episode is going to kick off a two-part discussion recapping the latest news and updates announced at D23, the Ultimate Disney Fan Event. This year's D23 event in Anaheim, which was called D23 Expo in previous years, was absolutely bigger and better than ever before, with an immersive show floor, iconic panels, and larger than ever tentpole showcases held this year for the first time ever at the Honda Center down the road. D23, the Ultimate Disney Fan Event, raised the bar for Disney events, and I simply cannot wait to see what's in store for the 2026 event in Anaheim. As we reflect back on what was a weekend filled with some groundbreaking announcements that will set the stage for Disney in the decades ahead, our two-part discussion will include our thoughts about the latest news about the Disney parks, experiences, and entertainment. In this episode, part 1, we'll discuss our overall thoughts about D23 and several of the most major Disney parks announcements. In part 2, we'll complete our conversation about Disney parks, chat about the amazing Disney Legends ceremony, which I think exceeded even the Oscars, and share our final thoughts about this year's event and the future of Disney. At the end of the show, we'll return to Imagination Central, where I'll share ways in which you can stay connected with Imagination Skyway, how you can discuss this topic with others, and how you can help support and inspire the future of this show. Please remain seated, keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times, and enjoy your grand circle tour aboard Imagination Skyway. Normally, I'd like to start with a really nice preamble about the topic that we're going to discuss, but I feel like I want to skip the preamble and get right to the conversation today because there is so much to discuss. Of course, today we are talking about D23, the Ultimate Disney Fan Event, and this was quite a year, quite an event for D23. And unfortunately, I was not there in person. Having a 1 week old at home made it a little challenging to get out to Anaheim. Needless to say, I was glued to the news. I was watching recaps, checking social media, feeling as much as possible like I was virtually there. And so I'm, needless to say, very excited to chat about the subject today. But I wanted to bring on guests who did get the chance to go in person and who many of you listening know well and have heard on the show before. So I wanted to, before we jump into the conversation, welcome back, first of all, Brooke McDonald. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, thank you. And congratulations on your new little one.
Thank you. She's a hopefully future D23 baby as well. We'll drag Maggie's already been to a couple D23 events. We'll get Emily out there as well. And of course, welcome back, Philander. How you doing?
Doing well. Also, congratulations.
Thank you. Well, this episode is not so much, yes, as a piece of news on my end, but this is so much more about all the Disney news that came out this entire weekend. And, before we just jump in to the announcements, which normally I like to go in chronological order, but today we're going to jump into experiences first because that's what I know everyone listening is the most interested in. If you're listening to this show, that's probably the topic that you're most interested in is the parks. But I want to start by actually just asking a little bit about your experiences, Brooke and Philander, with this year's D23 Ultimate Disney Fan Event, especially as it's evolved beyond the D23 Expo. So, Brooke, I'll actually turn to you first. What were some of your overall thoughts just coming back from this weekend and reflecting on how the entire event was organized?
Well, let's see. First of all, we had no idea really going into it what it would be like, knowing that these marquee panels every day that were typically at either 10 or 11 each morning would be moved to 7 p.m. at the Honda Center. So, I think everyone's number one takeaway was, wow, we are tired. Because it used to be that, the biggest news of the day would come out in the morning. And then, you would do whatever you needed to do to kind of process it, those of us who were working. And then the day could end at whatever time. But if I'm looking at it from a guest perspective, I would say, again, probably quite tiring. It's a very long day, but also a really impressive overall experience. The floor was amazing. I mean, and I think we'll probably talk a little bit about some of the different booths and activations. But everything was really comfortable, I think, in terms of crowds. There was a lot of space. You never felt like that, cattle call sort of, other than perhaps security in the morning. I never really tried to rope drop anything because we were didn't get back from the Honda Center until 11 p.m. at night. But that was the only time I really saw any sort of big crowds. And overall, it was the Honda Center at night was a massively entertaining spectacle each night. So people, we kind of looked at those tickets and said, wow, they're kind of expensive, but each night of the show really, I felt like, delivered a really much bigger, entertaining performance rather than just like, reading the news kind of thing, which we're used to for, say, just Josh getting up there and reading the news at a parks panel. So that's kind of my really overall takeaway. And then we could dig in a little more.
Yeah, I mean, just from the outside perspective, it looked like what was in the past a massively well organized conference. Like it really felt like a conference or some sort of big fan event. Really now felt more like, from the outsider's perspective, an experience. And so your point about the entertainment factor, just we'll talk about some of the things that I watched, and it felt really to live up to that Disney entertainment level that went far beyond what we've seen in the past from this weekend in Anaheim. Philander, did you have any other takeaways from the event this weekend?
Yeah, and even like kind of what Brooke was saying, the floor was fantastic. Not having Hall D23 this year led to them being able to use that space for guests to enjoy it. So it felt so much more spread out, like massive. There obviously were a couple of pinch points here and there, but that's to be expected as people lined up for things, and especially certain areas had more popularity than others. But for the most part, having the merchandise, some of the merchandise in other sections really spread out the floor. So that really helped with, what people would, I think, in the past think of as like that kind of overcrowding in a certain case. And then since the convention center was open until 7, a lot of the individuals that were heading off to go to Honda Center, that left the show floor very empty if you did not go. So that was also probably fantastic for individuals who may have been particularly bummed that they didn't get to go to Honda Center, but it left them with a quite open show floor to get to enjoy pavilions and stores that had much longer lines during the day. So it felt like a big win. Also, the evolution of having now really just D23 taking over the city of Anaheim. There were so many different offerings throughout the city, whether they're going to Angel Stadium or D23 Day at Disneyland. They screened The Incredibles, at Pearson Park, which was not too far from Disneyland. So it was a really great way of kind of making it so that if you did come down earlier than the convention itself or the fan event, that you actually got to do a lot of different things. So I hope that trend continues in the next 2 years. So it really kind of leans to them not necessarily saying that word expo anymore, as opposed to truly being a fan event, because it was far more than just the convention center this year. And I love that what Brooke said, they really honored the fact that you paid for that ticket to see those panels, because each one of those, whether it be Legends experiences or entertainment, felt like a grand show, as opposed to, like Brooke was saying, just having Josh read the news, which is hilariously what we all would have really wanted anyway. But they did honor that by making it a big experience. And I think that will 100% help justify people who were maybe particularly curious about that. Like, do I really need to pay to hear Josh tell me what I can read? But I think based off of what was shown, what was done, via social media, YouTube, whatnot, I think it'll be people want to be in that room next time.
Yeah, I certainly do. It seemed incredible. Again, before we jump into the first showcase that we're going to discuss today, I feel like we could spend probably 5 podcast episodes talking about everything. Philander, you mentioned the events around the weekends at Disneyland and at Angel Stadium. And so those are probably discussions we could have in a completely separate episode, just to show the scale of this event and this weekend. But concentrating before we jump to really what is going to be primarily focused on the discussions and announcements from the Honda Center, just bringing it back to the Anaheim Convention Center for a moment, what were some of the, starting with the show floor, some of your favorite exhibits or booths or any activations that you saw within the show floor space that you could visit just throughout the day?
I gotta always say, Imagineering.
Yeah,
That one
that
was
booth looked
always a first for
incredible.
me. You know,
I can't
as
call it a
long
booth. Yeah.
yeah, it's park stands. You know, like it's. And I think this year they did a really great job. While it didn't necessarily lean super hard into what was coming, just having, you know, the hollow tile floor there and having Imagineers sculpting like live, you know, like those kind of things. Well, it's always great to just talk to them individually because they have so much that they can share when it comes to designing things for the parks. Having these like small activations within their booth was really awesome. Like, yes, we come from the models and the announcements, but just getting a chance to see them work, one, either on the sculpting or watching them demo specific things, like that is always fantastic because it gives us a really lovely peek into that design process that you wouldn't necessarily get from just reading, you know, stuff that's on a wall that you just, okay, I could see how they do it. They're actually talking to you and demonstrating certain aspects of it. So I really love that. But I feel like that's such a given. Other than that, I really enjoyed the Avatar booth as well. They put a lot of effort into that. While what you could have imagined they could have theoretically just done, you know, like props or things like that, they made a very immersive experience that had a lot of things you can touch and stand it from, very Instagrammable or great for photos. And the very touching tribute to John Landau in there was awesome as well. So I think those were two highlights for me. There, I really like the Lucasfilm one, but I'm going to let Brooke talk about that one.
Oh my gosh, it was so amazing. This was the first, I think the first public display of the volume, which, you know, is this huge screen, you know, this curved screen that they used to film Star Wars and lots and lots and lots of other things, all the way down to, you know, Olympic Team USA Olympics commercials they did just before this. I saw. It was, so they had a really cool opportunity where you could actually just queue up and you never had to wait too long to actually go and step in there. And they always had a droid or some stormtroopers or something set up in some sort of a backdrop, a scene from inside a Star Destroyer or Obi-Wan, or some kind of set. And they would take about a 10-second video of footage of you inside, you know, in this scene, and just show just exactly how it worked. So that was kind of like their standing activation at Lucasfilm. And then they had panels, several a day, which it kind of wasn't really clear actually from it. If you looked at the initial D23 schedule that they put out, it looked like Star Wars and Lucasfilm was kind of not part of the schedule. But everything, they held some of the most amazing things that I've been to ever with Star Wars in that pavilion. Doug Chang spoke and explained how the volume works and how they use it to save, you know, he said, this is and he gave examples of, look at this set, think of what we would have had to do to build this physical set, you know, and here's how the volume enables us to create bigger and better Star Wars, you know, scenes than we ever have, and also still manage to do it on budget. And it was really funny. He kind of talked about, he would actually kind of show their hand and point out where fans kind of have started to catch on to, you know, the little tricks of the trade, and explained how they're always trying to change it up to stay sort of a step ahead of eagle-eyed fans, just all that kind of stuff. Legacy Effects would do panels as well, explaining, you know, droids. I watched a panel on how they built Huyang from Ahsoka, and then of course had to go and see the Stranger IRL, Manny. So yeah, they had some, you know, some star power conversations in there too. And yeah, it was that. So that was fantastic. That was definitely my favorite.
That's so cool. I just know by everything I saw, because I experienced the same thing going to the parks. You see it online and you're impressed by it, and then you go and see it in person, and it is an entirely different experience and so much greater than what you imagine. So even things like Philander mentioned, the Avatar whole experience that they had, like, it looked cool in photos and videos, but I just know that if I were there, it would have been so much of a grander scale and even more immersive, just being there. So I love everything I saw, and really am looking forward to what they do next. But I was gonna.
Oh, one other thing to
Yeah,
mention
go
that
ahead.
I would love to about the Imagineering Pavilion, because there's always the "Be fair to Florida," comments, which are fair a lot of the time, and because Disneyland does get a lot of really cool stuff. And I loved that they brought the BDX droids from Galaxy's Edge to the Imagineering Pavilion. So there were a lot of people who were coming from all over and maybe typically go to Walt Disney World. So that was really cool too, to give guests the opportunity to see something that they might not see, in their home park.
Yeah, that is a very cool point too. And actually, just a separate thought that gave me, I'm curious. I think, Brooke, you had the chance to at least interview Mickey. Did either of you also get to interact with Rocket? Because that seems to be a very cool opportunity. And what was that like?
It's really fun. Like they did a great job. Obviously, it has the similar vibes of Turtle Talk, but you can see definitely an evolution of the technology with Rocket. I guess it seemed like almost movie quality. Crush, when you see him, you can definitely tell that it was something that's obviously created a lot earlier in time and still works wonderfully today. Like, seeing kids enjoy that, they're not thinking about the technology that's utilized and creating that experience. But the Rocket one is taking what almost looks very similar to a movie quality version of him, which is fantastic. And that level of character interaction is incredible, especially for characters like him that would be harder to meet, in other different types of ways in the park. So I'm looking forward to the evolution of that, and where they can take that, especially for young kids, where they're at a point in their lives where that fantasy and reality are, there's such a blend at that point where they can't really tell. Obviously, while adults are stunned by the technology, and are just trying to figure out how it works, like anything WDI does, it's such a great thing for kids that are just at that age of like that was real. Like, they'll go to school the next day and say, I talked to Rocket, at Disneyland or at Walt Disney World. So that's exciting to see where it'll come. But I loved it.
I love
Yeah,
that.
I did both, and the Mickey Mouse opportunity that wasn't open to guests. It was an invitation that I'm very grateful for. It was amazing. And Brett Iwan actually wore a mocap suit and was, the actual voice of Mickey Mouse, and was was the one who was interacting. And then later that night, he actually did the same thing and was he was in some capacity, I know, certainly by voice, up on the stage on the screen, with Simple Plan, they performed a 30-minute set, which was actually another really cool thing that happened at D23, which was just a 30-minute concert on the Spotlight stage, first come first serve, packed with fans. Everybody knew all the words. It was just such a fun moment. And Mickey was back there in the background, like playing guitar and dancing. And he might have been playing, I can't remember if he was playing actual guitar or air guitar, and that was all tied to Simple Plan. It has one of the singles from this new album, A Whole New Sound. They played their Can You Feel the Love Tonight song. But it was just, there were, I guess, kind of, to close the loop on the floor, if we want to move on.
Yeah.
I was just at San Diego Comic-Con, 2 weeks ago, and the same companies, their activations were so dramatically different. Lucasfilm was just costumes up on pedestals and displays, and Marvel, similarly, just here's a bunch of costumes for the most part. Whereas Marvel here was, you literally walked through the TVA and it was a whole interactive experience. And the way that you saw the costumes was like through a time warp space. And then you saw Rocket at the end. And, even one of my favorite merchandise brands, Roosevelt's, they did, whereas they always just have, shirts up on display, they built an entire interactive booth, and they brought in Tony Baxter and a Disney artist, Jimmy Mulligan, and his brother, Michael Mulligan. And they created this whole space called Workshop of Wonders. And they didn't put a single shirt on the outside of the booth. It was instead like little clues to, what was inside. And they did they had a Pepper's Ghost effect to do the reveal of their exclusive shirt each day. So really, even the people who are there to sell things really this year more than ever created an experience for, on the show floor. And I think that was a distinguishing factor between, okay, well, I'm really here for the big panels at the Honda Center. Like, why do I even need to go to the convention center? And they really, I think everyone who was exhibiting there, elevated their game a lot from that perspective too.
That's great to know. And I have always enjoyed going to the show floor. It's also a nice break from especially, for folks like us, where we're there to cover as much and just take like tons copious notes about everything that's coming, everything that's been announced. Like, it's a nice little breather as well, just to kind of wander and enjoy and interact with the show floor. But it does seem like they just elevated that game this year, and it makes me excited for what they're going to do next. But yeah, as I said, we could probably do a whole episode just about the show floor, but I know everyone listening is probably itching for us to talk about the showcases. And like I said, normally go in order and make everybody wait to talk about, we kind of conclude with the parks, but I want to start with it this time and jump right into the Disney Experiences Showcase, because I feel like there was a level of excitement and enthusiasm and just energy that came from this whole evening at the Honda Center. Not even being there, just I could feel that from the outside, seeing the social media posts that happened and some of the stories that I saw from creators who got to go and fans who got to go and attend the event. So, before diving into some of the specific announcements that we heard this weekend, I guess, Brooke, I'll turn this over to you first. Thinking about the energy in the room compared to especially some of the previous events at Hall D23, whenever Josh D'Amaro would come on stage or someone else in the past would come on stage, what was the energy like in person this time?
Well, I mean, I think the most interesting component, there was a lot of star power. They really did do, kind of a cool pre-show. But I think, there was an incredible self-awareness about Josh's presentation and an emphasis from the start of, these things are real, because everybody, watched a couple, Destination D23 and D23 Expo in 2022. There was so much blue sky, so many things changing, so many, okay, this is the third time we've heard, the same thing just kind of re-announced. And it was, and I think they heard the complaints, and they were like, look, all of these things, we're giving you dates. We are, there are shovels and dirt. And they just kept emphasizing that. And with every recap blog post, they put the same quote, shovels and dirt. And so that was the main message to the fans that they wanted to get across, aside from, the entertainment component. But there were a lot of kind of self-deprecating, self-aware jabs at that from start to finish in the show. Everything from you're like Deadpool, who will obviously make fun of everybody. But, just from start to finish. So I thought that was the overarching theme, was like, we know that we need to give you real information, and we're also going to make fun of ourselves for having not done that before.
Yeah, that was really great. Flander, any other thoughts about the panel as a whole? Like, panel, what am I saying? The showcase as a whole?
I love that we kind of showed off what they've been teeing up for a long time now, and that was a big part. I, thankfully, due to my job, so a few of those things I knew, and we learned for quite some time. They were teeing up this entire thing, the $60 billion turbocharging the park. Like, they would not stop saying those things, and that was really a big tee up to what this presentation was about, really honoring the fact that we know the parks are beloved by so many, and they make so much money because people love visiting them. So now we have to put back into it, and they really made sure to do that. There was, like Brooke said, trepidation from fans going in. But I always try to remind everybody that it takes time for these things sometimes, and to, do your best. And I know it's hard to respect the Imagineering process that it takes to create things. And obviously the pandemic doesn't help, but to let them create, because we love Imagineers. We love the process. We love learning about them and their history. But when it comes to actually giving them the time to create and develop, that's where sometimes people, depending on the person, can get like a little antsy about things to come. So the process that it takes to create things like Rise of Resistance and Cosmic Rewind, Avatar, it's years of development sometimes into, they will deliver because they have, and it's just, we've got to be patient. So I'm happy that the announcements, for the most part, for I think almost everybody, they felt like they were the right announcements at the right time, and that everyone is very excited because it's obviously not stopping here. There's going to be considerably more, and we'll learn more about things yet. But overall, the energy was high. Like, it's whether you were in the room or not, just how these things happening one after the other. If you were following on social media or Twitter, Instagram, or X, like seeing all these things come one after the other. And they're all big things too. Like, none of them were like, in the past it's like, oh, Disneyland's getting Portos, and everyone's like, oh, okay, that's okay. Or if you were at Walt Disney World, you may not even know what that is. You're like, I don't know what a Portos is, but one after the other, this big, ride, land, cruise ship, like just big one after the other. So I think they really delivered and made sure that everyone is hyped for the future.
Yeah, I mean, and that was a really good point. Something that I thought of afterwards. I was like, they didn't even mention, like, in the past, they would have certainly talked about the DVC Polynesian Tower, been like, oh, and it's coming soon or something. Like, they didn't even, there were so many things that they didn't mention because they focused so much on really big, I think, longer term projects too, to kind of give people a vision of like, no, like, we do have big plans going forward, and these parks are going to be amazing. If you like them now, like, they're gonna have huge new things over the course of the next 5 and 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it felt like so many parks did get a lot of love, every single one of them. And the one that maybe got the smallest was Epcot, but Epcot just went through this tremendous transformation and still got news regardless. So everything just, I agree. And I personally felt to Brooke's point, the self-deprecation, I definitely got that just from some of the imagery. I love that they had Deadpool there. And the Soren tribute in the beginning that I heard about and saw some clips of looked very cool. And then, yeah, I feel like they obviously, starting with that whole idea of this is not blue sky. These are all actual announcements that are coming. They have listened to some of the feedback from the past, and I know that they also are, as in the case of Walt Disney World, responding to. First of all, I feel like they have known about Epic Universe for a long time. It's not like this was news to them, but they're now showing the facts that they have already been working on a lot of things to keep ahead of what even Epic Universe is developing. So and then a lot of things that we'll talk about that were talking directly to fans and ideas that fans have had or have talked about in the past, and saying, we hear you and we are going to bring some of those things to you as well. So for this, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I mean, and we could maybe pivot, but in the past, I've just kind of said, like, let's talk about this announcement. Let's talk about this announcement. Let's talk about this announcement. But I thought instead, we're just kind of go around the room and talk about some of the announcements that excited us the most from the Disney Experiences Showcase. And then I'll make sure we cover at least the majority of the large announcements and we don't miss anything. And I will, as always, go last when it comes to roundtable discussions. But let's see. I'll go West Coast to East Coast. So I'll start with Philander, then go Central to Brooke, and then end with myself on the East Coast. So Philander, I'll turn to you first. What's one announcement that got you really excited this weekend?
It's one of the smaller ones, really. I guess, I mean, small in obviously size, but big in experience is the Walt Disney animatronic going to Disneyland. Which was rumored for quite a long time, and everyone was wondering because there was news articles about Disney investing heavily into the Opera House and what would that mean. But just from a fan of Disney history, loving that this will now exist for so many generations, especially for that generation that doesn't really know a ton about Walt Disney. I make the joke with people all the time of my daughter used to ask, who's that man holding Mickey Mouse's hand? And obviously to us, we're like, oh my God, it's Walt. But to the generation of children, it doesn't mean much to them. So to have this way to learn about him, very similar to the one man stream at Walt Disney World, this is such a unique way to do it. And definitely there is obviously individuals who are hesitant about kind of doing this type of entertainment, but also this type of educational entertainment. I'm very much all for it. What a great way to respect this, visionary individual in a format that he would have found fascinating if he had lived long enough to see it in the extent that we will. And how exciting to, get to see a version of him, not too dissimilar to the hologram version that exists in that traveling Disney 100 exhibit, but in his own words, talk about his life and in what I'm sure will be a stunning animatronic. Like I was very excited to see that kind of come to fruition, or that announcement at least.
Yeah, I am anticipating I will fly out just to see that. Like that will make a Disneyland trip for me as a Disney fan, just to go and see that animatronic. And it's one thing to hear about that idea on paper, but again, I talked about earlier, when you experience something in person, I feel like there's going to be this emotional reaction to being in a room where it's not really Walt, but how do we all react when we're on Rise of the Resistance and Kylo Ren is there, right? Like there's, it's not Kylo Ren, but it's so realistic that it plays into the story, and we can feel like that's really Kylo Ren in the room. So I'm just imagining what that's going to be like having a Walt Disney animatronic. I'm glad that they are doing this in tandem with I think it was Roy P. Disney, right? Mm-hmm. That he was kind of there to talk about the animatronic as well. And the idea that it's going to be rotating with great moments with Mr. Lincoln, that being Walt's hero as a kid, one of Walt's heroes as a kid, and the history of the, Abraham Lincoln animatronic from the 1964 World's Fair being one of those first human animatronic figures, to now in that same building that it houses today, having the Walt Disney animatronic and this whole Walt Disney A Magical Life show there. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited about it.
More people to the Opera House. No one ever goes in there.
More people at the Opera House. Yeah, a great place to start. And, we're starting at Disneyland. We're starting with Walt, which is always a great place to start. Brooke, I'll turn it over to you next.
Okay, well, I'll jump to Walt Disney World, and I have to go with Tropical America's Pueblo Esperanza, the new Dinoland USA replacement. It looks amazing. I am so excited to have an Indiana Jones attraction confirmed. Thrilled about that. My kids love dinosaur. I don't love dinosaur. I love it because they do. My younger son cried when I told him. My older son, we just went to Disneyland and rode the Indy ride there 100,000 times. And my son was like, that this ride is going to be so much better. Yeah, Indiana Jones Adventure is my favorite ride at Disneyland Park, I think. And the thing I love the most about some of the new information they gave us here is the way they described Pueblo Esperanza. I'm saying, yeah, that's the name.
Yeah.
The way they compared it to Harambe in terms of it having this really lived-in feel, and we saw that in the concept art. And I mean, if those parts of Animal Kingdom, which is basically all the rest of Animal Kingdom besides Dinoland, which I do respect, totally respect that concept and what they did there and appreciated it. But this sounds like such an amazing new replacement for that, that will fit really well in the park. And we even saw, I love how many tangibles they gave us. They gave us detailed concept art. They gave us they gave us multiple models. We got a model of the whole land. We got a larger model of the casita. So there'll be the Encanto component. So basically the overall, my understanding, it seems like there's an Encanto area, there's an Indiana Jones area, and I think the entrance is more just tropical Americas. And the restaurant, which they're calling Hacienda, is one of the largest quick service it will be one of the largest quick service restaurants at Walt Disney World. I don't think that that's like an Encanto restaurant per se. I think it's kind of representing the region, as we don't have that many details yet. And then there's there's going to be a wooden carousel, and we actually got to see in person the first figure from the carousel, Kevin from Up, and it had that really weathered, handmade feel that reminded me, for example, of things that you'd see around Animal Kingdom, and also the wood carving, the Wookiees wood carving in the marketplace in Galaxy's Edge. So I just, everything that we're hearing and seeing, it's very clear that this isn't underway. There is a plan, there are, detailed models, and it all just fits. I feel it really is fitting in the park, and it just looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it as well. And the fact that it is opening in 2027 is amazing, because I didn't expect that quick of a turnaround for something like this, especially when you're, the dinosaur to Indiana Jones adventure, I can see that happening in 2 years. The addition of an Encanto attraction and completely revamping Dinoland into tropical Americas, that's ambitious. So I am looking forward to that getting done soon. I admire the fact that they are also doing this in phases so that, as they said, guests can enjoy dinosaur a little longer. It's Joanna's favorite attraction. But at the same time, she's totally understanding of like, look, this Indiana Jones is going to be amazing. And she loves Indiana Jones Adventure too. So she totally gets it. I like the fact that there's also it's not just a copy and paste of Temple of the Forbidden Eye, but an entire story devoted to, and it doesn't make much sense because that's a Lost River Delta in India, and this is tropical Americas. But the fact that they're incorporating an animal component with this mythical creature that's going to be lurking in the temple and connecting it to tropical Americas is incredible. I'm also very excited about the Encanto attraction, whatever that's going to end up being. And yeah, Brooke, to your point, like I feel like that lived in component of the Imagineering side of the town is really going to make this fit so well with the entire aesthetic of Animal Kingdom. So I think there's going to be this grieving period for those who love Dinoland and love dinosaur like anything else. But then once we get to that other side and grow that emotional connection to tropical Americas, is going to just elevate that park experience.
Looks so.
And the other thing that I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I was saying I agree so much with you. You said, Brooke, about how beautiful it looks, and I think people often speak so highly of the beauty of Tokyo Disney Sea all the time, but I always tell them, like, do not discredit Animal Kingdom. That park is absolutely stunning, and I think with the addition of this new area alongside Asia and African Avatar, that will make that park arguably the most like beautiful Disney park on the planet, I think. Because I think for a while it would be hard to add that in with Dinoland, because it was done as obviously a very different way than, comparing Africa and Dinoland as two very different things. But that new area is stunning and will fully flesh that park out to a park that I think will make people, it's the kind of the few Animal Kingdom haters that exist where it's like, it's just, it's a zoo. And I'm like, well, it's not like, that will really flesh it out to where that whole complaint of the half day experience for Animal Kingdom, which I've never agreed with, but, to each their own. But this will really help bring around that full day experience, a massive new area to enjoy, new attractions, new restaurants, character meet and greets. So I'm so excited.
Totally agree. And the one other thing I was going to add, which it struck me at some point, about it not being a half day, is so we are adding, essentially not that dinosaur wasn't really an e-ticket, but It wasn't that popular all the time. And so 2 e-tickets, but also I was noticing all 3 of those rides are undercover. So from an ops perspective, we're adding all, and most of the things that were announced, actually, at least, at Hollywood Studios in here, um, all not going down for rain. And I think that is not something to be discounted. Like, you get a rainy day, all of a sudden, Animal Kingdom could be your rainy day park. Even the dining, I think, is all undercover over there. So that's and we also know that Animal Kingdom can be a really hot park. So I think that's something that people don't really talk about, but I always think about how it works with the weather and works with ops and how, it can stay up all the time. So that's another helpful thing for new attractions.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. And I should mention, as we sort of close, we could spend again a lot of time talking about Tropical Americas as well. The Encanto ride itself, the fact that the casita on the outside is going to be alive, just like in the film, is going to be so cool to see. And then the fact that we get to go into and tour casita on the day that Antonio gets his gift and conclude in Antonio's room and that rainforest ambience, it's going to really bring you into the film. And I can't wait to see what the Imagineers have come up with for this. And just 2 years away. So it's, or 3 years away. I'm thinking already it's like 2025. We're at the back half of 2024. So we're getting there. I am going to jump to I'm going to jump back to Disneyland, and specifically Disney California Adventure, which seems to be getting a lot of love. And this was one that we already knew about, but I was excited to hear more about, especially after, as we'll talk about, the Disney Entertainment Showcase, the announcement of the third Avatar being Avatar Fire and Ash, and that the whole aesthetic that's going to come with that film that James Cameron was talking about, the Avatar Land, whatever it's going to be called, that's going to be coming to Disney California Adventure, which we did get that glimpse of some of the concept art earlier this year. But hearing more about it and the confirmed what appears to be water attraction that's going to be coming to this land as well. The idea that it's not just going to be again, copy and paste of the other coast. There's not just going to be another Valley of Moana, but a entirely different ecosystem that's playing off of Way of Water and then Fire and Ash, with these dense forests that are going to lead into the wide open seas, and the fact that there's going to be, as was described, a dynamic, intense, emotional water attraction. And the concept art appears to be, it seems it's going to have some dark moments in it. It seems like it's really going to be a thrill attraction, and not just not that I was expecting another Navi River journey, and I love that attraction, but it almost feels like they're going to even take what they learned from the Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for the Sunken Treasure and take that to the next level, whatever that is. The fact that they are saying that it seems to me like that's now going to be considered older technology, and they've now thought of something even greater than that. Like, the first thing that actually popped to my mind, not that I'm predicting this, but just looking at the concept art, it looks like they might have come up with an equivalent water attraction version of a trackless dark ride, but with a boat. And that just is again, I'm just maybe misreading the concept art and the way they're talking about it, but it feels like they've unlocked that somehow, which would be cool.
I had the same reaction to that. I know exactly. I had that similar thought. So you're on the right track. I would love to hear what Philander has to say about this.
Oh, for sure.
I am so excited. One, obviously a fan of the film, but I don't think it even it shouldn't even matter, to be honest. I know there are people that are like, I don't want Avatar out here, but I think that that's the same vein of individuals where it doesn't necessarily need you to enjoy the source material to really love the attraction. Perfect examples of things like Radius Wings Racers, Rise of Resistance, Cosmic Rewind attractions where it has, or Flight of Passage. You don't have to be fluent in the intellectual property to enjoy those experiences. It shouldn't matter. Imagineering will create a fantastic experience and you will enjoy it whether or not you care about it or not. So many people just blown away by Rise Resistance that I think I want to watch Star Wars now. Yeah, I mean, the kind of attraction brings it out of you. So, and I love the love. I love the love being given to California Adventure. It definitely needed from like Brooke brought up a park hops. It needed a big giant people gobbler eater, and a boat ride will 100% do that. With also what I know we're going to talk about soon, the Coco inspired attraction coming as well. But what a great addition. And then another thing to even flesh out that park even more, that park has transformed so much over the years since its opening in 2001. And these, I think 4 new additions it's getting in the next few years is what a major win for this park, and really makes the Disneyland Resort a top tier destination, despite the fact obviously that people consider it small. Like, it's hard to justify that comment really, because what is being put into this relatively small space is massive, and these are big draws that will make people travel from all over the world to come out to California to see them. And just the popularity of that franchise, people that even doubted Avatar when it was first announced for Animal Kingdom, and then once stepping into that land and seeing how gorgeous it was, like based off of that alone, how can anyone? I personally, I say, how can anyone not be excited about that? Of them delivering the same scale, the same detail, the same, just gorgeous look of that land. And I'm more excited also for the water effects. I love water in theme parks, that kinetic energy. And this seems to be that times 1,000 with all the based off the concept art. So I am stoked.
It's going to be cool. Philander, where would you like to go to next? Do you want to stay with California Adventure because there's more there, or do you want to jump somewhere else?
I'll just talk about Coco.
Yeah.
And how excited. I mean, what a great film to make an attraction off of. Obviously, while I think it's easy to maybe assume that you get a ride based off that film where you ride on one of the alebrijes like that. How great to create what they seem to have described as like a Pirates of the Caribbean-esque boat ride through show scenes with animatronics and music. Like, what a perfect way to travel through the story of this film, using animatronics and, it was great visual effects, and another boat ride. I'm such a fan of boat rides. While there is always fantastic room for thrill rides and roller coasters in my mind, there's nothing to me like a slow moving boat ride that really lets you see the prowess of Imagineering, because there's obviously easier ways to hide things at high speeds, but to really let your eyes linger on a scene like what you get when you have Pirates, where you move by just slow enough to really take in every detail, every animatronic, every person, the smallest details. I love that this is something simple, but I'm sure will be so grand. And it's, when you go inside this show building and, visit this land of the dead, how incredible. And I'm so excited again for California Adventure, and then another boat ride, which is great for the park operations of that park, because California Adventure definitely needed something for that. And having 2 major boat attractions is such a huge win. And I couldn't think of a better film to get attraction and something original, not a copy from another theme park. The first Coco attraction, which is also perfect for the demographic of Southern California. Like, this is just absolutely perfect for them. And I could not think of a better place to put that attraction, or even, it's hard to even think of a better movie to get one for. So another huge win.
Yeah, I know a lot of Walt Disney World listeners would say, well, thought we were going to get that in the Mexico Pavilion at Epcot, which I've always said is a logistical nightmare, because when Grand Fiesta Tour gets a 10-minute wait, the Mexico Pavilion is overrun. So imagine a Coco attraction with an hour plus wait. No, I love the fact that it's going to California Adventure as well. And one of the things that I admire always about Disney, which is one of the many reasons why I always love Disney, is that they put so much thought not just into the e-tickets, but, Philander, to your point, to the attractions that are slower paced. And, especially someone who does get motion sick on a lot of the major thrill attractions, I like that I don't just have a show to just go and watch while my family rides a thrill, or a flat ride of some kind that's just sort of put together just to entertain me while I'm waiting. for the, to put all the emphasis on the e-tickets, that they do put so much emphasis on attractions like these that everybody can enjoy. So I'm looking forward to this too. Brooke, I'll go back to you. What's next up on your list of things you're excited for? Hey, there's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah, and they've gotten so spicy in the last 24 hours. I'm like, I don't know which one I want to touch first.
I'll touch the spiciest if you don't get there, so don't worry about it.
Honestly, so let's go to Magic Kingdom. Let's just do it.
Let's just jump right in. Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll jump right in. And so, well, first of all, we have villains. Villains confirmed, and that was one of those very cute sort of self-deprecating moments where there was a joke of like, oh, the panel's over, and then it was like not so fast kind of a thing. So Villains Land is very much happening. I think it's it's the furthest out, certainly at Walt Disney World. The concept art is stunning. So if that's what we get, it should be worth the wait. The one sort of ride you can pick out is a coaster with a thorny track, and you see a Maleficent dragon up on a peak, and it's very much the Sleeping Beauty thorn sort of look to it. That could be a whole villain's who knows, like, and of course concept art is concept art, but there's so much there that looks really, really interesting, really exciting. But again, that's further out. It's confirmed. I firmly believe it's happening. More immediate is the new Cars area that is coming to Frontierland, and it was announced. It was announced and somewhat enthusiastic. Some people said, I'm not sure if cars work in this time period. And then, of course, we learned on Monday after D23 that it would be going in place of Tom Sawyer Island and Rivers of America. And so some people are really super duper unhappy about that. I am just going to start with, as an attraction, I think we've done this podcast before, and when asked like what I think is the best theme park land anywhere, I love Galaxy's Edge, so I had to kind of like put that aside because I love Star Wars too much. It makes me biased, but I do think that Cars Land is maybe the most perfect screen to physical land ever. And I love that. I love that land. Radiator Springs Racers, I say, is one of is certainly in the top couple rides of all time. It's a great mix of dark ride, thrill ride. And so when I hear that we're getting a new Cars ride, a new Cars area, and then we see concept art that looks as elaborate as it does, I'm enthusiastic about it. It looks very exciting, and I think it could be great. When I look at, I understand people's complaints about losing Rivers of America, losing Tom Sawyer. But when I think about the scale and the beauty of the backdrop of Radiator Springs, and you imagine when you see that villain's concept art and that there are all of these peaks and mountains, I'm almost wondering, are we plopping another big mountain in the middle of Frontierland for sightlines? Possibly. I don't know. I think there's so much possibility, and I'm one of the slower ones to be angry about it, I would say.
I trust the Imagineers, and I have for a long time, because they always tend to deliver on these things. And it's definitely a bold, daring move, to say the least. That's something that, it's not Walt's Park, but it is something that was a part of Walt's Park and is still a part of Walt's Park. For me, it answers the logistical question I had of how are you going to bring people behind Big Thunder. This answers the question easily, because it would be a bottleneck if you had to go, because my first thought was they're going to go in front of Thunder Mountain, between like under the Frontierlands train station, carve out this path similar to the Critter Country entrance to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, just like kind of like create this new path there. But now you have this huge swath of land that you're creating that you can bring guests back there. and still have to probably go under the railroad to transition into the villain's land that's eventually to come. But that answers that logistical question that I had. It also, to me, the only lost piece of, other than, I tend to leave nostalgia aside because nostalgia is only ever subjective to the person who is thinking about it. My daughter is not going to be nostalgic. Like now, she's never going to be nostalgic about Rivers of America, and that's fine with me. She's going to have something else to be nostalgic about. So I always leave nostalgia aside. It's the past is the past. But the component that I've always enjoyed about Rivers of America is that quaint water element. And so that's the biggest complaint I've heard is not so much, everybody agrees not many go to Tom Sawyer's Island. Like it is something that for a lot, for some Disney fans, that is a must do. And I've seen plenty of people go to Tom Sawyer Island every time I go there. But for the vast majority of people, I would not say it's something that is on their must do list. It's on their once in a while list. So you're taking that space and you're now creating must do's in that area. But the water element was the piece that was the only piece that I thought was missing. But thinking more about it, while I love, Brooke, your analogy of Cars Land, I'm kind of picturing Grizzly Peak with a Cars aesthetic or Cars elements. So when I think about walking through Grizzly Peak, it has much needed shade. It has a wonderful aesthetic to it. And especially, I can only imagine they're going to include water elements in here. So waterfalls, streams, things that will still maintain that vibe of Frontierland. It's just going to be, I think it's something that the skeptical Disney fans are going to have to go with and just sort of trust the process and wait to see what that next level of Imagineering looks like. And I'm also, again, love the fact that we're getting two attractions. One is that e-ticket thrilling, heart-pounding Cars ride, and in another is going to be for the entire family to enjoy, which is very important in a park like Magic Kingdom. Which is the most attended park in the world. And now it's going to give it something else for people to come back to if they haven't been to in a while. And if you come back time and again, something to enjoy. So I'm also in the camp of like the first reaction was, wow, that's a pretty bold thing to do. But, thinking more about it, I think it makes sense and I'm ready for it. Lander, you're in Walt's park. So I'm curious if you have other thoughts about that too.
It's bold. But again, like with you, I did not grow up going to Walt Disney World. Not that I think that park is any less because of that, but I didn't grow up going there. But I understand 100% your way of looking at the Rivers of America. While you may not utilize it for any like an attraction purpose, it does provide a beautiful ambiance to that area of the park. But we also have to allow these parks to change and to grow, especially the most visited one on the planet. Like, that space is pretty prime. I mean, like, and it's a lot of space. So putting something that, again, despite how you feel about it, because I also wondered, and I would love to even ask you all this question. I wonder if people would have thought differently about it if it wasn't Cars and it was another property, because even Cars itself is like, people love Cars Land and racers, but they're not necessarily super into that franchise. And is that also a reason why people are so hard up on their river being removed for that, as opposed to, if it was this thing I loved, kind of like you said, Matt, about the nostalgic part of it. If I loved the thing, like, we're going to take that right out and put a Emperor's New Groove roller coaster there, would that have elicited cheers, from more so than the Cars franchise? Where people like obviously love Cars and Racers, but they may have never seen the film. So I've always wondered that. I've been thinking about that too. But it's a bit different, like you said, Matt, because it's not Disneyland. We have pictures of Walt on the Mark Twain, like that's a tough one to get rid of. But I trust them like you. I love the concept art. I love this very dynamic, like multifaceted kind of area that has multiple attractions. My mind is also imagining all of the incredible kinetic energy that will be that ride will give off, like as we see these cars roll around, because the concept art, at least from above, looks like as you walk by, if you're like making your way to Tiana's, or to Country Bear, that you'll see these cars ripping around the mountains. And I'm like, what a great like energy that will give to that area. While it's obviously very opposite of the slow moving, boats, and the calm nature, but what energy, the screams of people and the car sounds, kind of like when you walk past racers and you see the little race at the end with the zoom. Like I love when that happens. So I'm very excited. I'm not necessarily the hugest Cars fan in the world, or Cars fan, but I love big projects and bold strokes for Imagineering, and this is a big one. So they've got a lot of work to do. They've got a lot of people they need to impress, obviously, because this is happening whether they want it to or not. But I hope that people trust them like they've trusted them for so many other things, and I'm pretty sure they will love it if it's anything like what they plan to deliver.
It's interesting. The other day I was watching the Behind the Attraction series, and I just happened to turn on the episode about Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and it was a very similar moment to Big Thunder Mountain Railroad's emergence at Disneyland, especially because it is like Frontierland and Magic Kingdom is experiencing what Frontierland and Disneyland had experienced in the 70s, which is you had Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland, you had the stagecoaches. It just felt very tired, and it was less visited, and it was harder to maintain. And you had this revamp of, really you tore down. Like if you were a Frontierland purist, you got rid of Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland and the stagecoaches and all these other like real frontier-esque elements to create a new roller coaster. So it, which didn't have, they brought that frontier theme into it, but it was now upgrading itself, evolving into the next level of Frontierland. And now I think a lot of Magic Kingdom Frontierland enthusiasts are experiencing the remorse of, well, Frontierland Shootin' Arcade is now going to become a Disney Vacation Club lounge. Country Bear Jamboree is now Country Bear Musical Jamboree. Splash Mountain is now Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And Tom Sawyer Island is now going to be, and Rivers of America is now going to be devoted to a land for cars, section for cars in this Frontierland expansion. So they have just completely, short of the things like Pecos Bill and some of the gift shops, they've just completely revamped Frontierland from any of the original elements of it into this now. We're now in the next, we're now in the 2020s version of Frontierland. So I think it's just that the growing pains of Frontierland and Disneyland had to evolve. And I still think there were some questions about how our cars is going to fit into the Frontier theme. It geographically makes sense, but how are they going to connect to the timeline? So I think those are some of the questions that a lot of the enthusiasts and nostalgists will have. But Frontierland is now going to be very different than what it was even 5-10 years ago at Magic Kingdom. So I think that's where some of the friction is too.
Yeah.
I know we need to move on, but I really want to say one more thing about this as a kid who, this is a big one. Even if we never get to the entertainment, we have to come back and do it later.
Yep,
no,
exactly.
I grew up going to, in Frontierland, I'm extremely attached to at Magic Kingdom specifically. So it surprises me how much I haven't been bothered by this. And the reason I love Cars Land is actually not because I love the Cars IP first. I actually didn't watch Cars until after the first time I went to Cars Land at Disneyland. Cars Land at Disneyland made me love Cars, and that movie is all about preserving, it's Americana. That is that movie. It's about losing, the old ways and the things that we love. And when I say, when I think about the beauty of Cars Land, I'm talking about the rock work, rather than the, Route 66 sort of strip. And so from that perspective, so it is actually a really interesting IP when you think about the message and the whole point of the original Cars film. I agree with the timing of having Cars, and then the only other thing is the only time I've ever been to one of those actual physical remaining, ghost towns with the raised sidewalk and everything was in Colorado. And there were mountains, right next to it, just like that. So if you go and kind of look up those towns like that, you see the same sort of environment that we're going to see. And so it makes me, and when I think of, Radiator Springs, and I think of that rock work, and then I say, oh, if they can do this with the concept art they've shown us, it's going to be pretty hard to say this looks bad.
Oh yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this. Like I think this is going to be incredible, and it's one of those things that I feel like if you don't trust it, you have to just go and see it when it opens. And then I think, and I don't know what it's going to look like when it opens up, but I just feel like it's going to click when you go and see it in person for the first time. And even if it doesn't, even if it's like not the Frontierland you grew up with, not the Frontierland that you loved, it's going to be a Frontierland that you're going to, come to love in time. And again, the nostalgia is going to kick in over the years for the updated Frontierland. So,
before we leave Magic Kingdom,
Yeah.
should we really quickly just talk about the Pirate Tavern?
Yeah, let's do Pirate Tavern and Spaceship Earth Lounge, because that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Which was so cool, because they're not using that space for much right now.
But Philander, did you have something else to say about Frontierland first?
I briefly about the three of us having kids and Disney building stuff for that generation, the ones that will then bring their kids. Like I think about that all the time with my daughter, and I can only imagine it's the same for the two of you as well. That these are their Disney parks now, and they should reflect what they enjoy. Not, my daughter has no idea what Tom Sawyer Island is, and she will not miss it. I'm sure she'll love that new Cars ride when it's done. And then, maybe in the future she brings her own kids to that. And I love that idea. And it makes me, even if they were to take something away that I loved, I had nostalgia for, that is a kind of reassuring thought that always comes back to me as a parent, at least.
Totally agree. So yeah, Pirates Tavern, we got some more information about, and that is going to be opening in 2025 at Magic Kingdom. And then the Spaceship Earth Lounge, which the concept art looks really cool, is also going to be opening in 2025. And there's a space, again, that is a corporate lounge right now, or maybe private, maybe it's also used for private events. But I think just knowing exactly where that is going to offer a very picturesque view of World Celebration. So it's a couple of amazing announcements. Let's just let's see. So Brooke, you did. I'm technically up next. I'm trying to think who's up next. I'm going to run through a couple of the smaller announcements and see if we have anything, and then I'll run into one of the bigger ones. So we have, first of all, speaking of Frontierland at Magic Kingdom, over at Disneyland, Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I know it's not in Frontierland, but Tiana's Bayou Adventure is going to be opening up November 15th. So we got an official opening date for that. I'll be jumping around a little bit. Test Track 3.0 is opening in 2025, which was a similar timeline to when they went from first Test Track to Test Track 2.0. And just running down my list of all the announcements that they had. My goodness, there's a lot, isn't there? There is a new nighttime spectacular debuting at Tokyo Disneyland, Reach for the Stars, which is going to offer some sequences from Big Hero 6 and Up and Marvel were some of the ideas that were mentioned. But that one seems cool. Just like there's actually like a lot of announcements as I'm actually just looking down the list of all the things that they discussed. I'll, rather than run through these, I'm just gonna go to the next one on my list then. Talking about fans and things that fans have always wanted. So, all right, so no one expected the Frontierland expansion, but a lot of people, I don't think anybody expected Josh Tomorrow to announce a Monsters Inc. Doors coaster, which has been a fan theory and request for 20 years, I guess, ever since Monsters Inc. came out. Welcome back to Imagination Central. As you disembark, please remember to remain fully seated until the podcast comes to a complete stop. Then gather your belongings and watch your head and step as you exit. If you're anxious to hear part 2 right away, along with our discussion about the new Monsters, Inc. land and where we think that might go at Disney's Hollywood Studios, you can listen to the episode right now by subscribing to our Patreon channel at patreon.com/imaginationskyway. Or you can always, of course, wait until next week when the episode goes live to the public. After you exit the episode, I encourage you to engage with the show by following Imagination Skyway on your favorite social media app. And if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share it with anyone who might enjoy our discussion today, and leave us a rating or review in your favorite podcast app. If you're listening on Spotify or already following us on social media, be sure to answer our question associated with this episode, which is for you to tell me your thoughts about the announcements we discussed today. And speaking of Patreon, which I mentioned just a moment ago, there's a lot more to our Patreon community than early access to podcast episodes. As a subscriber, you can enjoy bonus content, join a private community of listeners, and help support the show. I have been working harder than ever to provide some incredible opportunities for our Patreon members, including a chance to chat with me and record a podcast episode just for Patreon members about D23 and our thoughts about this year's event. In either case, I encourage you to try out our Patreon community for free as a free member or with a 7-day free trial of our full membership program, again, by heading to patreon.com/imaginationskyway. Thank you so much for riding aboard Imagination Skyway, and remember, if we can dream it, we can do it.